If there's one thing the franchise has proven over the years, it's that emotional stakes can hit just as hard as punchlines. And when it comes to Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, the marriage crisis between Georgie and Mandy doesn't just feel like sitcom drama, it feels painfully real. That's why it still hits so hard, even after multiple episodes have dissected the cracks in their relationship. Part of the reason this storyline lands with so much weight is because we've known these characters for years. Georgie Cooper didn't suddenly appear in this spin-off. We watched him grow up in Young Sheldon, where he started as the underachieving older brother, constantly overshadowed by Sheldon's academic brilliance. He was immature, impulsive, and often insecure about not measuring up. But beneath that bravado was someone desperate to be taken seriously. So when Georgie stepped into fatherhood and marriage at such a young age, it wasn't just a plot twist. It felt like a defining moment. Mandy, older and more emotionally grounded, represented both stability and pressure. Their relationship wasn't built on the traditional rom-com blueprint. It was messy from the beginning, complicated by age differences, misunderstandings, and the reality of an unexpected pregnancy. That foundation matters. Because when a relationship starts under pressure, every later disagreement feels like it's echoing those early cracks. The marriage crisis hits hard because it doesn't rely on exaggerated sitcom misunderstandings. It's rooted in real incompatibilities. Georgie wants to prove himself. Mandy wants security and maturity. Those aren't opposing goals, but they require growth at the same pace. And that's where the tension lives. Georgie is evolving, but not always fast enough. Mandy is patient, but not endlessly so. What makes it even heavier is the franchise context. In The Big Bang Theory, we already know Georgie's adult life isn't exactly a fairy tale. There are hints about failed marriages and complicated relationships. So when we watch Georgie and Mandy struggle now, there's a layer of dramatic irony. We're not just watching a rough patch. We're watching the possible beginning of the end. That inevitability lingers over every argument. And yet, the show does something smart. It doesn't villainize either of them. Mandy isn't cold or unreasonable. Georgie isn't careless or selfish. They're two people trying to hold together a marriage that started before either of them was fully ready. That nuance is what keeps the crisis from feeling melodramatic. There's also the emotional baggage Georgie carries from his family. Growing up in the Cooper household meant constant comparison to Sheldon and constant financial stress. Georgie learned early that love and stability weren't guaranteed. So when he senses Mandy pulling away, even slightly, his reactions aren't always calm or logical. They're protective, defensive, sometimes immature, but understandable. Mandy, on the other hand, carries her own expectations. She didn't envision her life unfolding this way. She likely imagined building a career first, establishing independence, choosing marriage on her timeline. Instead, she found herself navigating small-town judgment, family scrutiny, and a husband still figuring himself out. That disconnect between expectation and reality fuels the crisis. What makes it resonate even more is how grounded the arguments feel. They're not about dramatic betrayals. They're about responsibility, money, communication, emotional support, the kinds of issues that real couples face quietly every day. That realism is why audiences feel it. It's uncomfortable because it's familiar. The spin-off also shifts tonal balance compared to Young Sheldon. While Young Sheldon leaned heavily into quirky observational comedy, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage allows more space for silence, for awkward pauses, for conversations that don't end neatly. That tonal shift gives the marriage crisis room to breathe. And then there's Georgie himself. Watching him genuinely try, to be better is what makes the strain heartbreaking instead of frustrating. He's not the slacker anymore. He's working, providing, showing up. But effort doesn't automatically equal emotional readiness. Growth isn't linear. That's a hard truth the show isn't afraid to explore. Another reason the crisis hits so hard is because it challenges the franchise's long-standing comedic comfort zone. The Big Bang Theory often resolved relationship drama with humor and quick reconciliation. Georgie and Mandy lets tension linger. It acknowledges that love alone doesn't erase incompatibility. At the same time, the chemistry between them remains strong. That's crucial. If the audience stopped believing they care about each other, the storyline would lose impact. But every time they argue, there's still underlying affection. That makes the possibility of separation hurt more. There's also something deeply human about watching two people realize that loving each other isn't always the same as being ready for each other. Timing matters. Emotional maturity matters. Shared vision matters. And the show doesn't shy away from that complexity. Even visually, the series reinforces the weight of the crisis. Domestic spaces feel smaller during arguments. Scenes linger longer. The laugh track softens during serious beats. It subtly tells the audience, this isn't just another sitcom spat. And perhaps most importantly, viewers are invested because Georgie's arc has always been about proving he's more than the other Cooper. His marriage represents adulthood, responsibility, identity. If that crumbles, it's not just romantic failure. It's existential. That's why every disagreement feels loaded. It's not just about whether they can fix a fight. It's about whether Georgie's transformation is enough. The marriage crisis still hits so hard because it blends franchise history, character growth, and grounded realism. It doesn't rely on spectacle. It relies on emotional truth. And in a television landscape full of exaggerated drama, that authenticity stands out. We're not just watching a sitcom couple argue. We're watching two flawed people confront the reality that love requires more than good intentions. And because we've walked alongside Georgie for so long, because we've seen him fail and try again, every crack in that marriage feels personal. That's what makes it linger. Not because it's loud, but because it's honest.